Oh, then I can forward this.
Arts and Antique Radio Show, where your host, nationally recognized certified appraiser Elizabeth Stewart, Santa Barbara's treasure sleuth, will help you put a value on the treasures in your own home.
Okay.
Every time it rains, pennies from heaven. Don't you know each cloud contains pennies from heaven?
So let's find out, how valuable is it?
Hello, Santa Barbara. It's
Elf the musical, as they call it, Elf the Broadway musical, because it's a big, splashy, old-fashioned, wonderful, full of heart musical. The story of Buddy the Elf, who, those of you who remember the famous, the classic Will Ferrell movie, story of Buddy the Elf, who was as a little baby, crawled into Santa's bag and was basically raised by the elves. And he doesn't know he's human until later on. Then he travels to see his father to the big city of New York. And there he meets a wonderful woman who actually doesn't believe in Christmas very much. And basically ends up turning the whole city over to the Christmas spirit and having everyone believe in Santa once again and the joy of Christmas.
3, 2, 1, you're live.
Welcome back. It's Elizabeth Stewart. You just heard a little bit about the musical that's happening at the Ojai Arts Center Theater. It's Elf the Musical. And I thought I would ask the head elf, Buddy, to come and join us. I have Andrew Iden with me, and Andrew is, like you say, Buddy the Elf, and I just want to introduce him a little. Kind of an interesting guy. This is his Ojai Arts Center Theater debut. In 2022 was in Music Man. But he's been on the stage since age of 4. And we might have seen him in a couple of TV shows, notably ABC's Complete Savages, but he makes a good living as an audiobook narrator, Richard. That's really kind of something you've always liked. He's an audiobook narrator, and he's read books in every genre. And I noticed Disney's Frozen, Alpha, Eddie Gallagher, and the War for the Soul of the Navy SEALs. So he's done a lot of work in really different genres. We talked about his work as an actor. So some of the people that he's performed with, Betty White, Mel Gibson, Keith Carradine, received a lot of awards for his audiobook narration. He's voiced Disney titles. We're talking about Toy Story 1, 2, and 3, the Frozen Storybook Collection, Pixar Storybook Collection, and Wreck-It Ralph. And he's also the narrator for DC Legends Superman Dawnbreaker. And then just to round out the whole family, his sister and cousin are also award-winning narrators. They're the great-grandchildren of Newbery Award-winning Caddy Woodlawn, an author. And so this is a really interesting family. And I also think that y'all to know, hi, Gay, hi. I see Gay. Gay just joined us, Gay. Lane Jones is the director of Elf the Musical. We're going to talk with her too. Lisa just sent me some reviews today of the musical. She says it's let's see. Ojai Valley News says it's an audience pleaser. It's a delightful musical comedy the whole family can enjoy, etc. And many of the reviewers are saying Andrew Iden is marvelous as Buddy the Elf. His goofy charm, his gleeful personality, his childlike naivete are endearing. His energy leads the cast, etc. Let's see. American Songbook today says Andrew Iden owns this role of Buddy. That's all there is to say. Have you seen these reviews, Andrew?
I saw the first one, the one
the
that said
Ojai Valley News review, yeah. So let's see that there's a bunch more there's a review for Kelly Stone as Buddy's stepmother in a duet with her son Michael as an accomplished singer. Buddy's love interest Jovi belts out her solo Never Fall in Love with an Elf like a 40s torch song. So I'm reading some of the reviews for the musical, Elf the Musical. By the way, if you are interested in seeing the play, it's $25 for adults and $10 for kids. And I'm going to shout out a couple of times the phone number where you can buy tickets. It's 805-640-8797. And you can buy tickets. It's running through the 18th of December, the 18th of December. So I want to start with Andrew.
Yes.
Andrew, so how did you get into the role? How do you prepare yourself?
You know, I was thinking about that. One of the first things that I did in our very first rehearsal, we were in a smaller room at the arts center, and the adults were to sit in the chairs and the children were to sit on the floor. And I thought, you know what? If I'm Buddy, I'm sitting on the floor with all the kids. And that has really kind of been a driving force for me, because Buddy's he's an adult child, really. You know, I mean, he's 30 years old, but he's a young kid. All the energy, all the innocence, all the sort of love and joy of it. And when I did that in that first rehearsal, I could see all the kids see me and be like, he's one of us. And I was like, yeah, I'm one of you. And so then I've just kind of gone with that as my impulse. I think I've always had a little bit of an inner child that I keep pretty well refreshed in my life. So it's not a big reach for me, but I think that it was just an impulse I had. But the more I think about it, I think it was the right impulse to go with, to just, I don't know, make allies with all the kids and just feed off of their energy. Because there's a bunch of little kids in our show, and they're all so good, and so like their energy is palpable. So I'm just feeding off of that.
It's interesting because the article I pulled up in the Ojai newspaper is talking about the old saying, never work with children or animals. And the reviewer is saying how interesting that Gay has assembled this major cast of children to perform in this show, in Elf the Musical. Just a little background. So the plot line is that there's a important publisher, Walter Hobbs. He neglects his wife and son, Michael, in favor of his career. And here comes Buddy, was his son, the one that crawled into the Santa's bag.
Yeah.
Well, Walter reluctantly takes him in and offers him a job at his office. And Buddy happily trades his elf costume for a suit and tie, just like his dad.
Yeah.
And Buddy goes and tries to fit in the corporate world and reunite with his new family. And the twist of this, the modern twist, is that PETA, they put a boundary around the factory, or the corporate headquarters, to stop the reindeer flying around the globe. And Buddy, of course, has been raised by Santa up to this point, and so he knows that Santa's sleigh needs to fly, and so he takes it upon himself to save this major city in the United States, save Christmas and Santa for this major city. And so that's a little bit of the plot line, and it's based on the movie in 2003. Yes, it is a musical. Richard's giving us a sign. We got to go to a quick break, and when we get back from the break, I want to introduce Gay to the program, and I want to get her take on handling what I would assume is the cast, from 7 to 70 years old, and what a challenge that might be for a director. So we're celebrating Elf the Musical at Ojai Arts Center Theater, a little bit of seasonal joy. So don't turn that down. Back in a sec. All right, Richard.
And you're clear.
Yeah, so Andrew Richards done a number of audiobooks in his career. He's been in
Cool.
radio for about 40, 50 years. So, you know, he
Nice.
can, yeah, so Richard's our producer.
I'll look you up.
I think we all do. I've worked with the SAG-AFTRA local LA chapter on producing radio plays and capturing the old radio dramas like Gunsmoke and Life of Riley and all of those. We've captured those and we're making them available for the Screen Actors Guild retirement community
Oh, right.
in Calabasas. And then we're also making them available for teachers to use, et cetera, because it's such a wealth of scripts and way to perform on Zoom and edit Zoom, et cetera. So I think it's a whole new kind of area of performing.
Well, I will tell you that another great radio theater presentation that I listened to as a kid growing up was the E.G. Marshall's CBS Mystery Theater. And we would listen to that as we were driving home from Florence, Arizona, after visiting my grandparents on my mother's side. And, you know, I just loved it. I've produced a few radio theaters when I was in my 20s. And the very first one was by the late Norman Corwin. And it was, I had to look, because I'd never done it before, but I had to look at it from the perspective, okay, this is just a really long commercial with a lot of music and sound effects and a script. And when we were done, after 18 hours of of production, both recording of the actors, as well as, of course, being in the control room in the studio, putting it all together on reel to reel and so forth, we ended up with a 33-minute finished product. And I was, at the moment, at that time, I was so disappointed going, oh my God, only 33 minutes? And we spent 18 hours on this thing. And then I realized how good it was such a blast to put together. But we just had so much. I was 21. As a matter of fact, it was right around my birthday that year. And I just had such a blast. And I did after that. Chapter 2, I think we did a number of Neil Simon plays for radio theater and so forth. And this was for a radio reading service for the blind and visually impaired.
Yeah, I've done that with Santa Barbara. We would drive from Ojai to Santa Barbara to record for the blind. Yeah.
Elf the musical, as they call it, or Elf the Broadway musical, because it's a big, splashy, old-fashioned, wonderful, full of heart musical. The story of Buddy the Elf, who those of you who remember the famous, the classic Will Ferrell movie, story of Buddy the Elf, who was as a little baby, crawled into Santa's bag and was basically raised by the elves. And he doesn't know he's human until later on. And he travels to see his father to the big city of New York. And there he meets a wonderful woman who actually doesn't believe in Christmas very much. And basically ends up turning the whole city over to the Christmas spirit and having everyone believe in Santa once again and the joy of Christmas.
And you're on.
Welcome back. I'm talking of you, as you can hear, we're talking about the musical that's at the Ojai Art Center Theater, directed by Gay Jones. And Gay is with us along with the star of the show, Andrew Aiden. And Gay, we have had Gay on the program before. She's a fascinating woman. I just want to tell you that she taught theater in California for 34 years. And upon her retirement, the school where she taught theater, the theater was renamed the Gay Jones Theater. She so affected the school that way. She's been on all kinds of boards that are theater related and education related. She's in the Thespian Hall of Fame, etc. She's the founder of the California Youth in Theater, for example. She's president, or was president, and now past president of EDTA, which is a theater organization for schools. And I can't tell you, she's in all kinds of honorific societies, the World's Who of Women Secondary Educators of America, Young Educators of America, etc., educators in theater, stage direction, etc. And she's been working with Ojai for quite a while. She lives in Ojai, and her family super supportive of her directing career at Ojai Art Center Theater. And here we have Gay with us to talk a little bit about Elf the Musical. What was it kind of astounding to me as I was reading all the reviews today that I could find online. Everybody's loving the show, but they're mentioning all the kids that are in the show as so remarkable. So Gay, what do you do? How do you manage all those kids?
You know, first of all, we have a wonderful stage manager, an assistant stage manager, and the assistant stage manager is a retired educator who worked with second and third graders. So there's a natural buy-in there. So the other thing is some of these students, some of them, it's the first time they've ever been on stage, and they're just excited to be there. Some of them who are like 14 years old have more credits than some of the adults do because they've been working at the Ojai Art Center Theater with the youth productions and also the full theater productions for probably at least 6 years since they were like tiny kids. So they've grown up in the theater. And often I will have a little 6-year-old who will say, "This is the cue we should do this." And I'm going, well, that's exactly right, because we have these kids that have it better memorized than the adults do. So I think the kid wrangling to us, we have also wonderful parent support who's in the green room, which is their place to hang out. They have has a little cubby with their stuff on it, and they can put whatever there, but they want to try to be quiet as best they can. But we have parent support as well. So it's parent support, but it's also parent support in buy-in, that they understand these kids. Some of these kids are like 7 years old, and the night plays run until 10, and their bedtime is 9. And so the parents understand that these kids are doing this because they really love it. And like Andrew said, those kids turn on when they're on stage, and they're just wonderful. Some of them may have one line, and that one line is memorable to the audience, the way they do it. So I'm a big supporter of Theater for Youth, obviously. I also directed other youth places and other schools as well. But this intergenerational to me is a lifeline for continuity. These kids look up to, like Andrew said, he's one of the kids, but they look up to him as a role model. And they look up to what we established also on stage, which is really kind of interesting, family stage units.
Yeah.
So every time they're in a group scene, like crossing across the New York City or crossing into the Rockefeller Center, they have a parent who's with a kid, and they've established this kind of unit that they feel bonded. And so I think there's a buy-in there as well, that there's not only the performance element, but it's the empathy element, and it's also the collaboration element. So how do we do it? I don't know. But we do.
So I'm not completely understanding, Gay. So you're saying it's a family unit. So is it part of the script?
No.
That this is a family unit that's crossing the stage, or what is it that you're?
What it came from was Buddy's on a search for his family, and he finds his family, and his family first of all, his dad doesn't acknowledge him, and his mother is going, "No, I don't want to be a stepmommy." So I thought, let's base all of this ensemble work and all of these, when you have groups that walk across the stage for whatever to put money in the Salvation Army ladies bucket, instead of just traveling across the stage without a connection, say one of the adults may have a kid that will always be his or her stage kid. And they're together, and they go shopping at Macy's or whatever. So it's based on family, because that's the premise of this entire show, I think, is finding the family, creating the family you want, whether it's natural or not. And like they say, Christmas is getting families together, and maybe it's fighting with families, but it's also, it's a chance for everyone to be Santa Claus at the end, because that's what it's about. It's family. So I hope that made it a little bit clearer. It's basically staging technique.
Makes sense. So you're taking the premise of the show, which is finding family or creating the family that you desire, and you're building that into the actual stage direction.
Right.
So it's, completely visually reinforced.
Exactly.
And what's so interesting though is Kelly Stone, one of your actors, she plays Buddy's stepmother, Emily Hobbs. And what I find it so interesting that she is a little bit like you, Gay. She's an educator. Her principal job is her main job is being principal of
Yeah.
Matilaha Middle School, and she hasn't been in a show since her senior year in high school in the '80s. So now she's coming back to the stage after 40 years, and she's modeling this performance for her 3 adult children. So she wants to show people that we don't have to abandon the things we love as children. And she was encouraged to get back into performance by Joan Kemper, who she met in Ojai in 2018. And what's really ironic about this is that she's got some of her students, Matilaha Middle School students, that are on stage with her.
Yeah.
And she tells an interesting story. The second week of rehearsal, the students came up to her and said, "Look, since we're colleagues on stage together, shall we call you by your first name?" She's the principal of a school, right? And then apparently Mrs. Stone said, yeah, I mean, we're all on stage together. And then they said, no, we can't wrap our heads around that. But there she is, on stage with her own students. I find that fascinating, Gay.
I think Kelly blew us away at auditions because she was a vocal major at UCLA for the first 2 years when she was in college. And then she switched to education. But thank goodness she did for the kids. But like she said, she has this voice that is incredible. And I think Andrew will attest to that. But she also has an ability to set the bars high for these kids. Because some of these kids, working with junior high kids and middle school kids, they're just trying to find out who they are in life. But right now, she will come in because she knows the vocal technique, and she will come in and really work with particularly Michael, the character Michael, who is Walter and Emily's son and becomes Buddy's stepbrother. She will work with them on particularly hitting a note. And that's another whole kind of teaching, I think. So Kelly's kind of remarkable in that sense. We also have a lot of other educators and a lot of other people who've been in many, many shows and really love being with those kids. So I find it fortunate that we have adults who want to work with kids, because some have said to me, I said, "Do you want to audition?" He said, "I don't work with kids." And I said, "Well, okay, moving on." So I find it really charming and remarkable for them.
Andrew, do you have any stories about how I'm interested to know, because Gay is saying that kids, you portray yourself as being one of the kids, but they can't help but know that you're a seasoned performer, been in stage and audio work, as a star for a long time. So they have to know that. I wonder if you've got any stories. What do they say to you? How do you, we're talking about Mrs. Stone as a principal of a school. She sets that bar high as an educator, and she also does so as a performer. So I'm wanting to know what do the kids think of you, and can you tell us any stories?
I mean, I had one of the kids. We were moving through a different event that was happening, and so we needed to escort the kids from one section to another section. And while we were walking, this was sort of early on, but one of the little girls looks up at me and she goes, "I think you were born to play Buddy." And I was like, it hurts. It's so good. There's I think I try to help with the kids. There's like the one of the kids who plays Michael. He can be a little squirrely sometimes. And what I told him was, I said, you got to realize that there's a lot of moving parts here. There's a lot of moving parts here, and there's a lot of people, and there's stress. We're trying to put this show together at the last second. And so like, you got to know that if you put yourself out there too much, you might be the easy outlet for frustrations. So like, take care of yourself and like be be careful. It's good to have fun, but you got to like make sure that everybody's having a good time. And I think he heard it because I wasn't like, hey, shut up. You know, I wasn't just yelling.
Yeah.
I was telling him like, I understand the energy and the want to play and have fun, because that's what we're doing this for ultimately. But also let's like, you know, let's be careful that let's take care of ourselves and let's take care of each other. And
it's so amazing. What you said really resonates this time of year. You know, you can have in a family that one person that is the outlet for the family frustration in general. You know, this is the prime time of year for that. It's really interesting that you said that and that he got it.
Yeah,
you know, that young man got it. Richard's giving us a sign. We got to go to quick. I'd love to hear some more kid stories. If you've got any, and how they're reacting and what they say and how they perform. Love to hear that. Gay, how many kids are in the show?
We have about 15.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I cast a 35. It's a percentage, high percentage.
Yeah. Fantastic. Richard, let's go to quick break. Just a quick reintroduction. I'm speaking with the director and the star of Elf the Musical. That's at Ojai Art Center Theater. And by the way, Ojai Art Center is one of the, if not the oldest, it's the longest running multiple arts platform venue in California.
Right.
That's been operational since 1939. It has 8 branches for 8 art disciplines. And we're speaking with Gay, who's the director of this particular show, but also very active in the theater branch of the Ojai Art Center. So you can buy tickets by calling 805-640-8797, $25 for adults and $10 for kids. So let's go to a quick break, and we get back. I want to hear a couple more kid stories. There's 15 kids in the cast. Amazing job, Gay. Don't turn that down. Back in a minute.
Okay. You know,
all right, you're clear.
Might mention the matinees are sold out for the rest of the run, so it's only Friday nights and Saturday nights that are open. So
okay,
just still want to put that out there and have them be frustrated because matinees are closed.
That's why Wallace Cleaning Company created the 4-step cleaning process that uses
matinees sold out.
Yeah,
that's great.
Non-toxic solution.
The other thing I want to mention is that I'm embarrassing Andrew. I've known his mother for a really long time because she was a theater teacher in Whittier. So she and I work on several boards together. So I've heard about Andrew forever, and I know his family, and I know his mother is a playwright. So whenever I talk to him about word perfect on the script, I say you have playwrights in your family, one of whom is your mother. But it's this backstage story thing, which I think is fascinating. All of the connections we have.
Yeah.
Maybe we should talk a little bit about that. Do you mind, Andrew?
Yeah, no, of course.
Yeah, that's
I was
good.
expecting to.
What's that?
I was expecting to. I figured I was finding ways to bring it up myself. So
okay. Yeah. So what's the capacity of the theater, Gay?
122.
Okay.
Oh, and the other thing is, you know, we have families involved. We have a mother who is running the follow spot. 2 kids are in the show, and the father is in the show. He plays the fake Santa, which Andrew, as Buddy, gets to beat up, comically beat up. But the real families in the show, we have 5 kids of one family, age 6. Tom's is 6, I think, maybe 7, up through 15. We have 5 kids from of same family. So we've got real families that are involved as well.
Well, let's talk about that too. Mention that, Gay. Mention that. Yeah.
Elf the Musical, as I call it, or Elf the Broadway Musical, because it's a big, splashy, old-fashioned, wonderful, full of heart musical. The story of Buddy the Elf, who, those of you who remember the famous, the classic Will Ferrell movie, story of Buddy the Elf, who was as a little baby, crawled into Santa's bag and was basically raised by the elves. And he doesn't know he's human until later on. And he travels to see his father to the big city of New York. And there he meets a wonderful woman who actually doesn't believe in Christmas very much. And basically ends up turning the whole city over to the Christmas spirit and having everyone believe in Santa once again and the joy of Christmas.
And you're live.
So I'm just celebrating today Elf the Musical at Ojai Arts Center Theater, running through December 18th. And if you are interested in tickets, it's 805-640-8797, but they are sold out for matinees. I'm just learning. Friday and Saturday nights, tickets are available, but matinees are sold out. And that's kind of really cool when you think about it, because there's only 122 seats in the theater. Go ahead, Gay. You're about to say something.
Well, I was going to say we also have on our ticket and website that we're collecting canned goods for the Help of Ojai, which is the community assistance program. Right across the street from us, they have a building and a program. And people have brought in lots and lots of canned goods. We had the sons and daughters of Navy employees and also federal employees that are all based in Port Hueneme, and they brought an entire busload of like 15 kids, and they brought in probably about 4 or 5 big boxes of canned goods to donate. So that's part of the outreach as well. So we're giving to the community. So I think that's really kind of important.
Very cool. And, we're talking about, I just want to bring us back to this family issue. Andrew said something that really resonated with me. He said that, he's been modeling this idea that when you have something that's an intense kind of production, like a stage show or like a Christmas dinner or anything like this, where there's some stress involved, but it's good stress. Yeah. Sometimes there's one person that can set off this sort of as an outlet for frustration. And we were talking about that. And then over break, Gay mentioned not only is there a connection between her and Andrew, but that in some cases, entire families, she mentioned somebody's mom's doing the follow spot, dad's doing a performance, and the kids are in that. So the entire family is in the production. And I want to hear more about that. Andrew, tell us a little bit about the connection between your family and Gay.
Well, so my mom was a drama teacher throughout my life. She was my drama teacher in high school, actually. And her and Gay used to work together all the time for DTASC, for the Drama Teachers Association of Southern California, and the festivals that would put on. And they were close associates throughout all of that. So I knew of Gay Jones long before I even met Gay Jones, because my mom and her worked together for so long. And and Gay, I think, heard about me, some of my antics.
How cool. And so Gay, now tell me about the families that are performing.
Like you mentioned, the one family whose mother's doing the follow spot and the dad is playing fake Santa. Like I mentioned, that Andrew gets to beat up, is comically beat up, because he says you're not the real Santa at Macy's. And then 2 kids, one of whom gets to sit on Santa's lap and tell him what he wants. So the real child in life is sitting on his parents' dad's lap, and then another kid is playing the elf, who reveals to everybody, including Buddy, that he's human. And that just sets him off, okay? So that's one family. The other family we have has five children and youth. Youngest is 6, and the oldest is 15. And I did a casting, maybe a question for some people. We have a 15-year-old playing Santa, and he's tall, and he's thin, and he's not the pudgy Santa that you think of, and he's not the old man. And somebody said to me, I questioned the casting. I said, just let him play it. Just let him be it, because it's intergenerational. You can have a 15-year-old Santa, and Mrs. Claus happens to be 70. Nothing's wrong with that. So we had the one family whose kids have been in theater and been in children's opera for probably about 4 or 5 years, and their parents are supportive. The kids love it. They come in, they take care of each other. They're very, very polite, etc. So I think
right.
That's it. Go ahead, Andrew. Yeah.
They're a great that family in particular is a phenomenal addition to the culture of the cast, I think, also. Yeah. Because they're really positive, really open guys. They all work really hard, and they're just all great people. I really like them. I think I'm going to be friends with them.
They're really great people. The other one is, and I'm going to tell you, we also have a number of students who have individual educational programs, IEPs, and who are on the spectrum, but we bring them in and we still have expectations for them. And the one I'm thinking of is a high school student, and he comes in and he probably has 3 lines, but the way he says those lines, yeah. The audience gets it, and the audience laughs, and the student really likes it when the audience laughs. So, and he has a brother that also plays one of the Michaels. We double cast Michaels, and maybe that's controversial because it does change the energy, but I don't know about you. Every cast I've ever been in, when I've only had one student playing one role, something's happened to that one student. So I have 2 Michaels, and one is different, totally different from the other. Yeah. And it certainly changes the energy, but it also keeps the actors on their toes because they never quite know what the energy is going to be with the Michaels. So anyway, other families, I think that's probably about it, isn't it?
That's so cool. Yeah. And we're going to go to a quick break. When we get back from the break, I want to talk a little bit about Andrew and his career. I mean, I think this is fascinating, this audiobook and the stage and TV and all the things that he's done and the people he's performed with. Sure. I want to talk a little bit about that at the end, a little end of the show. Hey, Richard, do we have one more break after this? Okay, so let's go to a quick break, and we're just celebrating Elf the Musical at Ojai Art Center Theater. We have learned that the matinee are all sold out. However, Friday nights and Saturday nights are still available. You can call 805-640-8797 for tickets. And there are still tickets available. It's going to run through December 18th. Fridays and Saturday nights tickets are still available. Don't turn that dial. Back in a second with Gay Jones and Andrew Iden.
And you're clear.
Oh. One family I didn't mention, Andrew, we have to talk about Kara and Christopher.
Oh yeah.
My God.
So Andrew, do you live in Ojai?
I live in Oakview, yeah.
I'm Ed Jerome. I'm Maria Long.
So I'm not in the city of Ojai. I'm in unincorporated Ojai.
I'm Scott Dweck.
We have one other family unit which Andrew and I just talked about. Cara and Christopher. Christopher's an adult dancer, incredible Irish dancer.
Oh my God, yeah.
And his mother, Cara, they moved here from Germany, where they ran their own theater company for Army, on the Army base, and they came into Ojai and they looked at AACT, which is American Association of Community Theaters, and said, "What's around?" And AACT recommended Ojai to come on over. So Cara and Christopher came in, and they were a wonderful surprise. Cara plays Mrs. Santa, and Christopher plays one of the Greenway Press agitators, so to speak.
Their first show with Ojai?
Yeah, it is. I'd never met them before, never ever, because they just moved from Germany.
Yeah.
Because remember, she said she had all the costumes, but they were being shipped from Germany, so she provided a lot of elf costumes for us. Yeah.
Well, that's when she was talking about it so much, she was like, well, when we did it before, I thought, because I know that was Elf ever done before with the kids?
We did Elf Junior, yeah.
So then I thought she was talking about that.
Elf the Musical, as they call it, or Elf the Broadway Musical, because it's a big, splashy, old-fashioned, wonderful, full of heart musical The story of Buddy
Yes, we
the
do have
Elf.
one more break to go.
Those of you who remember the famous, the classic Will Ferrell movie, story of Buddy the Elf, who was as a little baby, crawled into Santa's bag and was basically raised by the elves. And he doesn't know he's human until later on, and he travels to see his father to the big city of New York. And there he meets a wonderful woman who actually doesn't believe in Christmas very much, and basically ends up turning the whole city over to the Christmas spirit and having everyone believe in Santa once again and the joy of Christmas.
Well, welcome back. That was a little bit of an explanation of what Elf the Musical is all about. It's running at the Ojai Art Center Theater through December 18th. Tickets 805-640-8797. I'm understanding matinee sold out, but Friday and Saturday nights are still available. Andrew Iden is with us. He's the star of the performance, and he plays Buddy the Elf. But I also am reading that he made his debut at Ojai in 2022 with The Music Man. However, he's been an actor since the age of 4. He's been in many television shows, notably ABC's Complete Savages. And we talked a little bit about his audiobook narration. He's voiced several Disney titles: Toy Story 1, 2, and 3, Frozen Storybook Collection, Pixar Storybook Collection, and Wreck-It Ralph, as well as being narrator for DC Legends Superman Dawnbreaker. So this is a career, and I'm fascinated. You know, Richard and I, we've been doing this show together 15 years every Friday, and Richard comes from a background of radio theater, and he also has done a lot of audiobook narration for the blind. So this is really interesting to us on this program. Andrew, tell us a little bit about your career.
Yeah, so I think I did my first one in 2012, so 2022 actually marks me 10 years doing it. It's something that I got into because my sister, who's a big VO actress, Emily Iden, look her up. She started doing audiobooks before, and then she invited these producers to her wedding, and I was the MC for her wedding reception. And so then I basically entertained these voice producers for 4 hours on a microphone, and they came up to me and they said, "Hey, you got a certain sound that we like, and you seem kind of like your energy's nice. Why don't you come and audition for us?" And so then I went and I recorded a sample for them, and then they just they started putting me out there, and people liked what I did. I think, my family has a history of authorship. Gay mentioned my mother is a playwright. My great grandmother was Carol Ryrie Brink, who wrote a Caddy Woodlawn, which was an old kind of Little House on a Prairie kind of book. But so there's a lot of that writing creative spirit is in my family. So I think the acting vibe plus sort of a mind of a literature vibe helps make for pretty good audiobook narration, I think. And so I started to do pretty well with it, and to the point where I was able to quit my other job and only do this. And it's not bad to be an actor for a living, basically. But yeah, I think my resume in acting helps because I have a couple of TV shows. My first one was actually Disney's Movie Surfers, and Complete Savages was on ABC, which is owned by Disney. So I actually have to give a lot of my credit for everything to. I passed the mouse's quality inspection, and so now most of my best things have come from Disney. But yeah, Frozen. There's also 365 Frozen stories, and they're just little short stories so that you can read one every single day to your children, or have Andrew Iden read you one. It's fun. It's a very fulfilling career to have, because I read probably at least 2 books a week, because that's and And I'm actually I'm sitting in front of my studio that I built inside my house. And that's all I do all day is I sit in this little cave over here and I read books all day long. And then I go at night and I play Buddy. But it's nice.
I want to know. So, Richard, maybe you know the answer to this, and maybe so I did an audiobook once for the blind, and I was in the booth and recording, and I was making mistakes. So I'd skip a word. They'd have to stop me. We'd go back. And it was like, okay, is there a way to edit that isn't stop and start?
Yes.
It's much easier if it's not reel to reel. You were talking earlier about reel to reel. Yeah, I use Pro Tools, and so it is start and stop. There's other things sometimes they do roll record where they just say, you just keep going and we'll fix it afterwards. But it depends on who you're working for. Most people prefer it's a cleaner presentation if you do punch recording. So if you say the wrong word and you said the wrong word, then stop the recording, go back to before you said it, and then start and say it right. So that then what they get is a pretty clean, then they only have to clean up all your little stops and maybe.
I want to go to quick break now, but Richard, I want you to weigh in on this. I think this is fascinating, the process of it. I'm such a big fan of audiobooks. I have a lake house on Lake Arrowhead, so it's about 4 or 5 hours away, and always put in an audiobook on the way there. And I always wondered about who does them. I try to picture the person's face. Usually there's a little tiny thumbnail on the back, saying, okay, this is, so and so that does them. But how they're produced is also fascinating. And I also want to know, Andrew, let's say there's sound, maybe I'm thinking it's a Western tale, and maybe there's sound of horses. Maybe there's, is there ever sound in the books you do like that? That's what I'm interested. We have a short break, and then let's talk about that. I'm fascinated to know how that happens. Don't turn that down. Back in a minute. I'm speaking with Andrew Iden. We're getting into Andrew's career a little bit, but the reason for this conversation is that Andrew is the star of Elf the Musical. He plays Buddy the Elf. Tickets are available at Ojai Art Center Theater. It runs through December 18th. Matinees are sold out, but you can still get tickets for Friday and Saturday nights. 805-640-8797. Don't turn that down. We're back in a minute. Fascinating what Andrew does. He's an audiobook reader. Who knew? Don't turn that down.
All right, you are clear. Well, Andrew, my very first what you would call an audiobook. Not an audiobook because they hadn't been named that yet. It was recordings for the blind and talking books. I was working for a radio reading service for the blind and visually impaired. They have an oral reading test. In 1979 and in years following, I took it 5 times. To date, and I've been doing what I've been doing in broadcasting for over 43 years. To date, I haven't passed that yet. But the general manager at the time said, don't worry about it, because we've had professional television anchor people who have failed our oral reading test, which really is nothing more than you're reading sections from the newspaper, from books, magazines, other periodicals, and the comics and so forth. Well, my very first recording was for the radio reading service, and it was a book that was given to me by my best friend I've known for over 50 years, called The Greatest Miracle in the World by Og Mandino. And I got to tell you, I had a reel-to-reel, had the mic hooked up, and I had to go back and electronically edit it as I went through it. I still have those reels too, by the way. Do I sound young? But yeah, I'm doing a series of books now for a local author. It's a sort of not exactly a detective, because the main character is not a detective, but it sort of plays out like a detective novel with a lot of drama and so forth. And I've also produced
Suspense.
a woman's children's book. She came down from Washington and we recorded, and I added some sound effects. You don't want to add them all because you want to leave something up to the
imagination.
Listen,
Elf the
it was
musical,
such a blast. Such
as
a
they call it, Elf the Broadway musical, because it's a big, splashy, old-fashioned, wonderful, full of heart musical. The story of Buddy the Elf, who those of you who remember the famous, the classic Will Ferrell movie, story of Buddy the Elf, who was as a little baby, crawled into Santa's bag and was basically raised by the elves. And he doesn't know he's human until later on. And he travels to see his father to the big city of New York. And there he meets a wonderful woman who actually doesn't believe in Christmas very much. And basically he ends up turning the whole city over to the Christmas spirit and having everyone believe in Santa once again and the joy of Christmas.
3, 2, 1, we're live.
Welcome back. It's Elizabeth Stewart. We're talking about Elf the Musical that's happening at Ojai Art Center Theater. And the star of the show is Andrew Iden, who is apparently the reviews are out, and American Songbook today says Andrew Iden owns the role of Buddy. That's all there is to say. But I'm learning also that Andrew has a fascinating career. I think fascinating. I think Richard and I've talked about this on and off for 15 years. The audiobook reader, and I was, thinking, well, how do you incorporate mistakes? And now I know that Andrew, if he makes a mistake, he pretty much either edits himself or has the employer will edit. But I also want to know about sound effects. Do you do any sound effects in your book, Andrew?
I don't do any sound effects, but that doesn't mean that if I send it to the employer, that my client. The one thing about sound effects, it's actually kind of a big discussion within the audiobook community, and I think what it comes down to is at what level do you want to activate the imagination of the listener, which is because there's also, it's just me reading the book, which means I'm all the characters. I'm the mom, I'm the girlfriend, I'm the son, I'm the father, I'm all of those characters. And if then we're going to start adding, but I activate your imagination through just the way in which I tell you the story. If we start adding in other environments into the experience, so that now you hear the horses clopping on the, cobblestone, or you hear the doorbell ringing, then now there comes an exception. I mean, an expectation from the listener that the environment lives inside the book instead of inside their head. And so I think there's a way you can balance it. If you do it with a careful balance, then you can add sound effects. But it is something that not everybody has that balance correctly, so that then it ends up with sort of a weird duality in the listening experience. But there's no hard answer to it, because also maybe it's fun. Maybe you can make the whole thing come alive on the, in the audio. How much are you willing to spend? How much time are you willing to spend putting it together? How much money are you willing to spend putting it together? Those are the other things.
Well, just one other quick shout out. Ojai Art Center Theater performance Elf the Musical runs through December the 18th. Tickets, guys, 805-640-8797, or you look up Ojai Art Center Theater. You can buy your tickets online. Friday and Saturday nights up till December 18th available. Matinees are sold out. I've been speaking with Andrew Iden and Gay Lang Jones. Thank you so much, both of you, for being with us.
Of course.
All right. Perfect.
Okay, you are clear. Very good. Very good. Loved it.
I love what Andrew said. Richard, that the expectation. Let's say you do sound. Now the expectation is the environment is outside, not inside the head.
Yeah, that's in their ears now. That it's coming in. That it lives in wherever I am, wherever my voice is. Yeah, that's the conversation. But that I do mean that there's not one answer to it either.
Yeah.
Because
I would say that children's books are probably more appropriate in that context, but not always, not always. And this particular book called Ghost Girl in Car Number 9 really just it lent itself to some of the sound effects. And then I used some, because it was sort of a westernish kind of thing. I used some transition music between the chapters. I mean, you can go to Amazon, look up Ghost Girl in Car Number 9 and listen to a sample of, because I produced that, and I produce the ones that I do. For example, what I'm doing now, I just go straight through. If I make a mistake, I mark it, but I go back and I listen to the whole thing from beginning to end, and then I'm editing because I want it to be as smooth as possible. Because a lot of people, what they'll do is, if wherever they made the mistake, they tend to punch that word. I don't want you to punch that word because nobody's going to know that you made a mistake. So go back and just deliver it like you normally would, correctly, and then move on from there. And that's the same technique I give to people who come in to do commercials, who have never done commercials before. I say, look, we can do it line by line, and that's fine. But if you make a mistake, just go back to the beginning of that sentence and read it normally, and then continue on from there. And that's just a lot of fun. I have to tell you, it's just such a blast.
I think ultimately the punching in is also a money saver because they're going to pay me. They pay per finished hour. So
right.
If it takes years to record the thing, or if it takes me 2 days to record the thing, I'm still getting paid the same amount regardless. But the engineers and the editors and the mastering people are usually on an hourly basis. So by having me do it as a punch edit instead of a roll, where I just record, it saves time on what they have to pay the editor.
Exactly. And of course, I charge by the hour too, whether it's narrating or producing. And of course, in this case, which is kind of nice. But again, it's a lot of fun. Unfortunately,